Yo guys, and welcome back. So today I want to talk about Chrono Odyssey. So I got to play it for the closed beta test the past weekend, and I put about 14 or 15 hours into it over the course of 2 days, basically. And I want to talk about my experience. So this is going to be the first video of two for me. That's going to include more positive things I really liked about Chrono Odyssey, and why I think it has the potential to be really great. It has that special sauce, that secret magic, whatever you want to call it, that can really make it stand out amongst its competitors. And then another video is going to come out later talking about the other negative aspects, the things that I need to see change and things that I want changed, ASAP, or at least going forward. So, again, this is going to be a more positive video. I know all of our feeds right now are blowing up with all these negative things about Chrono Odyssey, but it does have magic, it does have value, and we should talk about it. Yo, before we get too far into it, guys, it would greatly help me out if you guys were to subscribe. And, if you like the video, make sure that you do leave a like down below and comment as you want. I'm always around for discussions and stuff like that, but let's jump right into it. So I assume if you're watching stuff on our channel, you are an MMO player, or you at least know about MMOs to some degree. And if you do, you'll probably recognize that some of these fights and stuff that I'm showing you like right now, it's really interesting. There's patterns to memorize, there's dodges to be made, there's plays to be made, and skill levels that can be shown even at this early level. I was only level you know, I want to say I was like 5 or 6 when I was doing this on the beta for the first time on my swordsman, and it was a very crazy experience for a first boss that you're supposed to encounter. This is one of the first boss, like quote unquote boss fights that you can do in the game. During this fight or after or something like that, they do tell you that you can power up and come back. But I was very stubborn and decided to keep going. The point being is that these are pretty intricate fights. If you've ever done a low level dungeon or encountered a low level boss in any other MMO, I don't think you can ever make the argument that they were this detailed and this involved. And so I think that this game in particular is going to have a really interesting amount of skill expression that you're not going to be able to experience with other games. I genuinely think it's definitely part of the magic of this game, both the world and the combat experience. Now, some of that can be a bit clunky, and I'll go over that more in our video about things I want to see changed, but some of it is really genuinely smooth. The rapier, for example, on the ranger class feels phenomenal, feels so good, moving even between the melee with the rapier and then going to be ranged with the bow or the crossbow. And even the transition between the multiple weapons on all these classes, I think feels really, really great. And gives you a lot more variety in what you can do. I think that's so cool. In so many games, you are very much pigeonholed in the moment with whatever spec you have. And not to say that you aren't in this game too, but the functionality of the two weapon system kind of gives you a more diverse experience that you can have no matter what's happening without having to change anything for your build, right? That kind of flexibility, I think, like that is going to be really, really cool. I genuinely think it's something that's very special to this game, and I know some people are hoping that they get rid of the dual weapon system. I am not. I'm hoping that they lean further into it and let you maybe mix and match weapons or give more variety of weapons. Again, I'll kind of go over that a little bit more maybe in the other video, but the weapon system itself is very, very cool, and I love the fact that each one has their own talent trees. They're a little bland. Again, that'll be maybe more of a piece of the negative video, but the fact that it does exist and it's so smooth swapping between the two. When I was the swordsman, I'd go from the sword and board, I'd be fighting the boss, and stuff. But once I staggered it, then I just switch to the dual blades and I just go crazy on them or whatever. And then when it's unstaggered, I go back to the sword and board and fulfill more of my tanking role. But it means that, while the boss is staggered, I don't have to just be only a tank. I can also just be like a chaotic DPS, just go and ham. You know what I mean? And that's not something you get to experience in any other game. In Lost Ark or whatever, when the boss is staggered and not doing anything as a tank, you're just kind of you're just kind of chilling. Because you've already specced into being a tank. Now, you're not going to have the same effectiveness, surely, as a mostly tank with a little bit of dual blades, but you still have the option to kind of feel like you're going more of a DPS build in that moment and taking real advantage of the stagger. So after playing for a little bit longer, I ended up getting to the point where I was taking on my third chrono gate. And when I did, I came to the realization that, like, I had to change some things. I had to make things more viable. I had to invest in myself to get further along and be able to finish the chrono fight. Because what happened was I was fighting this monster, and at certain points he would go away, and then he would summon a swarm of ads. And the first time he did that, you could just kill the ads slowly, and then he would come back. But him doing it the second time, he would also come back faster, and so you'd be having to deal with the swarm of ads and the boss at the same time. Now, my build didn't really allow me to deal for this, and my gear wasn't the best at this point. But the point being is that there's a very clear strategy to having to deal with these things. I was more focused on just having to 1v1 the boss, but then having to add in this whole another level of having to deal AoE and deal with all of those, additional mobs really made me have to struggle a little bit, to be honest. And in a weird way, it was a very cool experience. It's something that I would recommend or even like to see in other games. And in fact, in Lost Ark, I have specifically said that the time that Lost Ark is the best is when it's, more chill and it's not as hardcore. But in this game, in some aspects, I think stuff like this is actually really okay. And actually, it's making me feel like it's more important than ever to add some of these challenging experiences to Lost Ark and other games, because you kind of need it. I think it adds um a level of challenge and a level of, Bungie used to talk about the idea of the mountain and having to overcome the mountain. And I think there's definitely some note to that for sure, even in MMOs in today's day and age. And so I think that there definitely needs to be that really challenging content, and maybe even specifically challenging solo content. It very much these chrono gates gave me very much Mage Tower vibes, and to be honest, I loved all those experiences, and I loved doing the Mage Tower back in the day. And so when you get to the point where you're like, okay, I gotta figure out how to min max my food and my potions and my build and all this different stuff, it gives you different motivations to try harder. And this is stuff that you can do by yourself. You don't need other people. So you can slowly work on it over time. I assume there will be some kind of rush to get all these different chrono abilities and things like that. But my point being is that, like, you can do it on your own time. It's cool that you can have this kind of tough, grueling experience by yourself. And honestly, the more I played this game, the more these boss fights really gave me that kind of Dark Souls feel. All right, so maybe the most important thing, and I think this is worth noting, is that realistically, we don't get these kind of open world, like sandbox MMOs or experiences very often. These kind of games are very, very rare, and they take a lot of investment. And so most companies don't want to invest them. Most companies want to do something like Crystal of Atlan, or even what Lost Ark does to a certain degree, where most of the game is like instance based and you're not really, truly interacting with the world in any meaningful way. But in this game, you can tell they've spent a lot of time in developing the world and trying to make it so that way everything's explorable. One of the things I like the most about the world and exploring in this game is that you can climb anything, and it's about finding the way that you can do it. So, like, you can take the normal roads, or you see that cliff face over there, let's climb it. You know what I mean? Let's figure out a way that we can work ourselves up the mountaintop from the side. And that doesn't happen by accident. These things are very clearly done by the developers, very clearly making these ridges, making these grabs for us to grab onto and continue climbing up the mountain this way if we wanted to. And this is everywhere. Every mountain that I could think of, or every mountain that I came across, I was able to climb this way. And what seemed like in any other game would be insurmountable or unpassable, you can very easily just traverse up the cliff. Like, it was almost it meant to be that way, because it was. They specifically designed those things and put in those details, while a little clunky during the beta, to make it so you can traverse if you want to that way. And it's not just climbing mountains, it's everything. That being said, it was very refreshing to have a truly open world kind of exploration feel again. And like I said, we don't really get that often. I feel like a lot of times what we've been getting is more of this instance based, kind of Crystal of Atlan feel. And not to say that there's anything wrong with that. It just doesn't have the same level of attachment that you build. You start memorizing the map and you start knowing where stuff is. And like, even your second and third time through, you start to know where different pieces of treasure are and where different mobs you need are. And so there's a level of familiarity and kind of almost nostalgia that builds immediately when you're in these areas. Oh, yeah, I remember I fought this dragon over here, or I fought that random spider mob or something over there. And so there's all these different things. Even with your deaths, you'll be like, oh man, that's right, I died over here to falling off the cliff or whatever. So there's a level of, like I said, like nostalgia, a level of attachment that kind of grows when you're kind of exploring worlds like this. And admittedly, when I first heard this, I was watching, I believe, Laufie's video before the beta, and she was really talking about how much the exploration really felt good and how attached she was able to get to the world. And admittedly, I can be the first person to tell you that I kind of dismissed this. And the reason for that is because I immediately went to, okay, but like, while that's cool for my first character, what about my second or third or fourth character? For me, alts are usually a pretty important part of my MMO experience. And so without having a good experience on those characters, is the whole game going to fall flat because it's such a pain getting through that experience because you have to do it more than once. Honestly, from what I was experiencing over the weekend, I didn't make a second character, but that knowledge and that experience that I had then became valuable because what happened was I already found the flax, gathering seed or whatever that I needed to make leather armor for my ranger. So I already knew where to go. And so already I was making these nostalgic kind of memories, finding a place. Oh yeah, over there I killed the spider boss. Or over there, I died to the dragon boss or whatever. You slowly start building these like memories in your head where you can kind of attach positive, experiences to them and stuff like that. And so going back and even seeing those again on your alts kind of even brings that back. It adds that nostalgia level somehow, even though it's not, it's not an old memory or anything like that. It just happened because it was all within the course of a weekend. But the point remains the same, is that it was a fun experience that I remembered and I kind of attached to that place in the world. And because of that, when I do go back and experience that, it was kind of fun again. I kind of hoped I could run into the dragon again and see if I could kill it this time on my ranger. And I hoped I could get the spider because I thought maybe it would help me get the spider legs or something like that, There's just different stuff like that. The world truly is, I think, one of the most captivating pieces of this game. And that's something that's really hard to understand if you don't play it yourself. Another thing I want to mention about the world is because all these things are very positive experiences, right? Like running into the dragon and running into the spider or whatever. There's also this element of, okay, well, what's around this corner? You know what I mean? This constant questioning, this exploration that like a lot of games I feel like don't truly value. And this game doesn't do it perfect, don't get me wrong. There's still a lot of things they could do to increase the value of exploration, but it's still cool experiences that do wait around that corner. And the more you play this game, the more you start to realize that. And so as you find new areas, you see a weird tower or something over there, and you're like, wow, okay, what's in there? I'm gonna go take a look. And then, like it ends up being rewarding. And so you end up finding, okay, well, every time I find someplace new or something that looks interesting, let's just go check it out. It just keeps adding to this level of like enjoyment that you experience with this kind of exploration. And it was something that I really, really enjoyed. All right, so that's enough yapping about the world, and I do think that is a very, very nice thing. One more thing, though, I do want to mention too is the setting, and yes, it's sort of related to the world, but hopefully you'll see what I mean for some of these clips. You're in these different areas and you're exploring the world, and while you're doing that, you're seeing these devices kind of floating in the sky and all this kind of weird alien mobs and stuff like that, especially when you start interacting with the chrono gates, which are kind of the ways you upgrade your main chronosphere thing or whatever. And the more you do that, the more it kind of gives you this weird sense of like almost like a juxtaposition of alien versus medieval. And it's kind of a weird mix. It doesn't really feel like it works and it feels very strange, but also is weirdly mysterious and kind of inviting and like makes you curious for how it's even happening in the first place. All right, guys. So that was just kind of my, things that I'm really positive about and what I believe to be the secret sauce or what magic this game has. I think Chrono Odyssey has the makings of greatness. It really does, and hopefully that will be fully realized. Now, I know some people were hinting or people were saying in an investment call or something that it was going to come out 2025. I think there's zero chance it comes out in 2025, and in fact, I'd like to see it come out maybe like 2027 to really make sure that the game has proper time to cook. And I hope that I can get into more of the open betas and stuff like that, and I can get to experience more of the content in this game. All that being said, I do have another video coming out where I'm going to be diving more into the negative aspects of the things for Chrono Odyssey. And believe me, there were a lot of them. Overall, the game is not where it needs to be, and if it landed right now, I wouldn't play it, even though it has the magic. And that's because it's a magic core surrounded by a lot of jank and junk. And unfortunately, that just means that the game is not in a good place right now. But I do believe with enough time, enough passion, it could get there for sure. Thank you guys again for watching. I greatly appreciate it. If you like the video, comment, subscribe, all the things you normally would. And yeah, I'll catch you guys in the next one. Do feel free to check out our other video. It's going to have a lot more of the stuff that this game needs to fix. So I'll catch you guys in the next one.